Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grand Cruz Astrology. My name is Clayton Cruz, and today we're going to talk about the eclipses we have here in October. On the 14th, we have a South Node solar eclipse, and on the 28th, we have a North Node lunar eclipse. Uh, Both of these eclipses are in a pair, and so as I see it, they are directly related to one another, and we can draw information from that. Now, if you remember me saying from my other videos about Venus and its retrograde motion and it going direct and starting to hit traction at the beginning of October, you might remember me saying that hold your horses because once we get to mid October, there's an eclipse. And though Venus is moving forward again, it does have traction, and it's not the planet Venus as a transiting planet is not directly involved in this eclipse. It is involved. The Venusian energy is very much involved with this, and I'll explain how. But just understand that this eclipse, this South Node solar eclipse, is, as I see it, the it's Venus's. It's the last laugh. Venus is making its final sort of trick play here, if you want to call it that. All right, and then after this, we'll after this set of eclipses, we'll have solid footing from which to get traction when it comes to Venusian related things. But understand that this eclipse is in the sign of Libra. Libra is the sign of balance. It's the sign of the scales. It's about one-to-one connection. It's about harmony. It's about beauty. It's about aesthetics. It's about social interactions. It very much has to do with relationships. Very much connected to how we relate on a one-to-one level with people. We also have Mercury not too far from this eclipse point within 4 degrees. So communication is also involved with this eclipse. And when we're talking about a South Node eclipse, we're talking about release. We're talking about letting go. Whether this be letting go of an idea around relationships or letting go of the relationship itself, something is being released. Something is being removed. Something is ultimately being liberated here. This is eclipses remove blockages and obstruction that are not allowing us to move on to the next stage, right? It's it's and it can be, eclipses, they come on very quick, but the energies that they display and they present are not they're not new and unusual, something out of nowhere that we didn't expect. I mean, they can come on suddenly, but this is not a new theme. It's something that is very likely been in our awareness and is now reaching its final point of letting go. With this lunar eclipse, it's the start of that, or the solar eclipse is the start of that. And so, being in the sign of Libra, it's, yeah, again, releasing. Now, that is the eclipse just in and of itself in the sign of Libra. Okay, with Mercury there, also having to do with you know, connecting, communicating, the intellect, how we think about things, how we think about our one-to-one connections, and how we frame our one-to-one connections and relationships now. But there are other planets at play here. Uh, you know, we see a lot of lines on this chart, red and blue. The ones that are of significant impact are Pluto right here, which is in a square within about 6 degrees of the sun and moon. And we also have a quincunx to Uranus. So I'll start with the quincunx to Uranus because Uranus is also in a Venusian sign. Okay, it's in the sign of Taurus. Now, the sign of Taurus and the sign of Libra are both Venusian ruled signs, but they are very different. They're two signs that don't see each other, even though they are ruled by the same planet. They're both Venusian, but they don't see eye to eye. They're very different, right? They're in what astrologers call each other's blind spots, right? They're 150-degree angles, what they call a quincunx aspect. It's a very kind of strange aspect. It's about two energies that just they don't understand each other. They don't really have much in common at all, except that they're both ruled by Venus, and that's what, again, getting into this Venusian energy here. Even though Venus is not directly related to this eclipse, we have Venusian energy in play here with the signs that are involved. And as you'll see, the second eclipse is in the sign of Taurus. So this eclipse cycle, this pair, these are Venusian eclipses, right? But they're happening in two totally different kinds of Venusian signs. Now, how are they different? Again, Libra is a sign of Venusian energy. It's very social. It loves adornments and gatherings and feeling good and finding balance. And it's an air sign. So it's lighter. It's light as a feather. It just kind of likes to flow, and it has a lot to do with, the party and communication and talking and getting on, and just, it's a very light energy, right? It's very chipper. But the Taurus energy is more about the Venusian side of creature comforts, of actual physical indulgence, of having material things, of having the good life in a very fixed earth material sense, right? So cardinal air, which is, Libra, and fixed earth, which is Taurus, both Venusian, but two very different expressions of it. So Venus is involved in this eclipse, and in this first eclipse, we're going to have Uranian energy coming from Taurus to make a quincunx aspect within a degree of the eclipse point. So what does this mean? Well, looking at it very plainly, we're looking at our relationships, looking at our interactions, looking at what we value in relationships and what we want and what we need and what's important to us versus how we communicate that to other, and how we find balance with other, and how we balance the scales and find an equilibrium. There is a disconnect here. There's a disconnect, and it's kind of, it's almost so, it's perfectly disconnected so that it's blatant, right? This energy is in play here for this eclipse, okay? It's there. And so whenever you have a quincunx, I say that these are two energies that they both need attention and they both need expression. And the way to integrate them is not to try to find a middle ground or compromise, but to let both of them have their time in the sun. Now, if this is internal within us, then we need to understand what we personally need out of a dynamic in a relationship or a connection, or whether it be the more material side of Venusian energy, whether it be things and pleasure and things like that, what we need on a personal level versus what's valuable to us, versus finding that balance and connecting with other and having a dynamic that actually works for both. Okay? So this energy is here. I mean, that Uranian energy in Taurus is very much like, I want what I want when I want it and how I want it, and I'm doing it whether you like it or not, because it's Uranus here. This is individuality. This is liberation. And, it expresses that liberation, whereas the sun and the moon are two energies, flip side of the same coin, in the sign of Libra, talking about integration and balance, right? So this is a very tricky energy to work with. It's not an easy one, and it can get messy if we try to force anything, or we try to make sense of it all at once, and we don't just let some things be, because that's what this energy is asking us to do. Take your hands off of the wheel in the South Node eclipse and relinquish, relent, let go, release. Okay, release the uh, desire to want to make it into something it's not, or to understand it in something that makes sense for you, or put it into a box. Okay, it's asking for release. Now, also what we have here with this eclipse is it's square to Pluto from the sign of Aquarius, from the sign of yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's not. It's square to Pluto, and I've got a lot. Yeah, it's square to Pluto from the sign of Capricorn, not Aquarius. And so, Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign of tradition. It's a sign of the old guard, of how we do things, of custom. Right. This is how it's done. Making a square aspect to Libra. This eclipse in Libra, which is about like finding balance and harmony, and so there can be some psychological issues around this. I mean, looking at it very plainly, there can be some psychological issues around commitment and what it is, how things should be, and what they ought to be, and what has integrity and what doesn't. Right? There can be questions that come up around this. There can be tension that comes up around this. There can be tensions around our own need for either freedom and liberation, or commitment and balance and harmony. Now, notice that we have here Pluto making a very nice trine to Uranus in Earth signs. So there is an opportunity here to look to Uranus in this dynamic. There's a harmony here between Uranus and Pluto, which means that we can be within ourselves. We can be within what makes us happy, and we can find a certain sense of satisfaction and assuredness in that. And this eclipse, with this eclipse, we're going to have to acknowledge that there is something that is off, that there is something that is disjointed in one-to-one balance and harmony and connectedness that may not jive with our individuality, with what it is that we want, with what it is that we feel is, for us, traction moving forward in a connection. Okay, so this, it's kind of a disjointed piece here, and so I just suggest not trying to integrate it all in one fell swoop, and sitting with this energy and understanding the experience and appreciating it for what it is. All right, because this eclipse will come and go, and it's kind of, it sets a theme, it sets a kind of undercurrent for the next 6 months, yes, but it's most intense right up front. Okay, now we can look to the next eclipse to see kind of where this is going. Okay, to get a better to get a development of this snapshot, right? So, looking at the lunar eclipse that we have, this is going to be on the 28th, and we're seeing a very different picture here, right? We're seeing a North Node eclipse. There's energy coming into that space in Taurus. What is interesting about this space in Taurus is this is going to be the same degree at the end of the year that Jupiter makes a month-long station direct at 5 degrees of Taurus. So this part of the zodiac is not finished even after this eclipse. So what does this mean? Well, let's look at it. We got the sun and the moon opposite one another. We have the sun in Scorpio, and we have the moon down here in the sign of Taurus. Now, Scorpio, where the sun is Scorpio is a sign of transformation. It's a sign of truth. It's about digging below the surface to get to the truth. It's very intense. It has to do, on an emotional level, can have to do with things like jealousy and brooding and some of these more negative things that we associate with intensity in relationships. But the only reason I bring it up is because, we've been talking about Venusian things. We've been talking about relationship with these eclipses. And this eclipse does involve Mars and Venus, because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, and Mars is not far from the sun. It's within 6 degrees of the sun, as is Mercury. So there's this intensity here with this eclipse. There's this sort of, we got we got Mars and Jupiter across from one another. Mars being the ruler of Scorpio, where the sun is, and then we have Venus being the ruler of the moon here, and the moon being in the sign of Taurus. So there's a lot going on here. But what I like is we have the moon and we have Venus, and within this eclipse we have them in signs that are trine to one another, and we got Venus trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter's, again, it's backtracking, it's making its way all the way back to that 5 degree point. So what does this all mean? Well, as I see it, I think this is where we are going to get the compromise, and we are going to get the resolution. We are going to get the understanding. We are going to get the clarity. This first eclipse that we have, this South Node eclipse, it's a little weird. It's got quincunx aspect. It's got disjointedness. It's got a psychological aspect to Pluto. Okay, there's stuff that we're working through. There's things coming up that we may not readily understand, that may be a little bit wonky. Okay. But with this eclipse, yeah, there is opposition. There's need for compromise. There is some tension here to compromise. But what I like about this eclipse is it's, we're seeing it clearly. This is, two energies that are across from each other, looking right at each other. And there are some connecting points here to bring them together if we use them. So I'm not going to get into the individual aspects of all the eclipse, but understand there is connectedness here with this second eclipse, both connecting Mars to each other and Venus to each other. It kind of makes this a little bit of a rectangular shape, but just understand that Mars connects the eclipses, and Venus also has a connection point too. So this is opportunity for resolution. And again, this resolution, even though it's presenting clarity, it's illuminating things with this North Node eclipse. And again, North Node is dragon's head, South Node dragon's tail. So this eclipse is about energy coming in to the sign of Taurus, right? This can be a power surge to the lunar, to the moon, to this lunar side of the eclipse, a power surge of energy around lunar adjectives like I don't know, security, safety, wellness, health, being the sign of Taurus, just feeling comfortable, feeling good, feeling nourished, feeling cared for, right? These are some buzzwords here with this eclipse. And given that Jupiter is coming back to this eclipse point later in the year, I don't think this is the end of it. Whatever revelations, whatever illuminations come from this eclipse on October 28th are going to be fortified and given a magnifying glass of optimism come the end of the year. Once we get into mid-December, into mid-January, it looks really good. It looks like things are being taken apart, things are being awkward and wonky, only to be rearranged and put back together in a way that can deliver something that is ultimately harmonious as we go forward. Now, it may not feel harmonious on October 28th, but hang in there, because that's where it's heading in the longer term train once we get Jupiter involved toward the end of the year. But I do see the clarity coming once we get to late October, October 28th. So very eventful, right? And I do think this is sort of closing out that Venus retrograde that we had earlier in the year that was quite impactful for a lot of people. This is sort of the continuation of that in a roundabout way, and finally bringing it to a culmination and ending, especially once we get to the end of the year. So that's what I got for the eclipses. Hope this was helpful, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.